speaking of the NFL, we're gonna ship away from basketball, because and we're gonna go to what I really enjoy is the NFL. So the NFL schedule was also released last week, and I just kind of want to look at it, and I want to look at it from a broader, scope, and kind of look at some of these games. My first thing I want to look at is the international games. Now we have it's crazy, y'all. It's crazy to see how widespread the NFL has been. We have a lot of international games this year. I remember from like maybe even less than 5 years ago, they were only having international games maybe twice a year, and now we have a plethora of international games, and it used to only be in the UK or in England, and now we have games from to Brazil. We got in Germany. We got in Madrid. Like we got it all over the place. So let's look at some of these international games. So the first game of the year, or at least international game, we got the Chiefs versus Chargers. It's going to be in Brazil. We got the Vikings versus Steelers in Dublin, Ireland in week 4. And then the Vikings, this is the first time in NFL history, I believe it is, for a team to go back-to-back weeks in a different country to play in the NFL regular season. So the Vikings, they go back. Looking at this, y'all, I'm like, damn, that must suck for like the Vikings, players' families and stuff like that. That's a long way away from your family and stuff like that. I don't know how they're gonna even do this. Are they gonna travel back to Minnesota and then travel to London to face off the Browns in week 5? I don't know how they're gonna do that, but or they're gonna just travel from Ireland to London to face them. So I don't know. And then my Denver Broncos, they're playing out in London again in week 6 against the New York Jets. I think the Jags should just honestly move to London because they always got a game in London. I'm sure maybe it's because their fan base is predominantly probably from London. Maybe I don't know. I mean, because it's in Florida, so it's kind of, I guess you can say, the closest thing to London. So in that sense, so the Rams are going to play the Jags in London in week 7. Now, I think this might be the first, and correct me if I'm wrong, y'all, but I think we're having a game in Berlin, Germany for the first time in NFL history where the Falcons are going to play the Colts. I find that a very interesting matchup, but we'll see how it goes. That's in week 10, so that's going to be later on down the line. We'll see if there's any playoff implications for any of these teams going into week 10. And then the Commanders, they round out the international games, playing the Miami Dolphins in Madrid, which I think is the first time in NFL history, in week 11. So you guys let me know down below what international game are you guys looking forward to the most. I'm looking forward to, obviously, honorable mention besides my Broncos versus the Jets. I actually am looking forward to that. That Vikings-Browns game, because that Vikings-Brown game, you got JJ McCarthy, the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. We'll see how he's progressed through the first 5 weeks of the season, and who knows who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns by week 5. Is it going to be Shedeur Sanders in week 5 and playing in London against the Minnesota Vikings? Will that be his first game as a Brown? That's probably the game I'm most excited for. And then obviously, that Commanders game is really going to look very exciting to me as well, too. Now, let's get into some of the primetime games as well, y'all. For our primetime games, we have 4 teams that have the most primetime games, one of them being the Kansas City Chiefs, which obviously is a no-brainer. They have 7. And then we have 3 teams tied with 6 primetime games. They're all in the NFC East, that being the Dallas Cowboys, the Washington Commanders, and the Philadelphia Eagles, the Super Bowl champions, y'all. Which, seeing the Commanders, everyone wants to see Jaden Daniels. So let's kind of look at some of these primetime games. Starting off with week 1, you got the Baltimore Ravens versus the Buffalo Bills. That's always a treat to see. You got the Falcons versus Vikings in week 2, which will be an interesting one for sure. Kansas City. Now, this one is what really confuses me a little bit. You got Kansas City playing the New York Giants in week 3 in prime time. Now, for this game, who knows? Is it going to be Russell Wilson? Is it going to be Jameis Winston? Is Jackson Dart going to be able to get his first game action? So I don't know. I'm kind of curious why they picked Kansas City versus the Giants in a primetime game, but I'm not too fond of the Giants. And then you got the Packers versus the Dallas Cowboys in week 4. Let's see some other headliner ones. You got the Lions versus the Eagles in week 11. I think that's going to be a very exciting one. My Broncos, y'all. We have two. We have two primetime games. We have one in week 13 against we got Bo Nix leading the Broncos against the Commanders in week 13. Probably huge playoff implications for both teams heading into that game. Let's see. And like honestly, like I said, you guys let me know which one you think is your most exciting one. If we look over to Monday Night Football, again, my Denver Broncos, they play on Monday night. This is probably a key one right here. It's a doubleheader feature that day on week 4. You got the Jets versus the Dolphins. Boom. But you also got my Broncos versus the Bengals. And if you guys don't remember, last time the Broncos and Bengals faced off, it was a thriller. It was a thriller of a game between these two teams. But if we look at some of these Monday night games, some ones that kind of poke out at me is this Commanders versus a Bears game, which is going to be in week 6, which is another doubleheader, which follow up the Bills and the Falcons as well. So that game is a game that I'm kind of eyeing on as well. We also got the Commanders versus the Chiefs in week 8. So like I said, y'all, we got a lot of Jaden Daniels hype. We got a lot, obviously, with Patrick Mahomes. You know, you can't leave him out of the spotlight for too long. And then another one that probably could have a lot of playoff implication as well is probably later on in week 17. We have the Atlanta Falcons versus the LA Rams. So who knows? Maybe these two teams will be battling out probably for the respective division or even for just to fight for that 7th or 6th playoff spot. So now let's look at some of the revenge games and rematches that will be headlining the NFL season. So in week 9, we got Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen, an AFC Championship rematch from last year. This is going to be the 10th matchup between these two teams. I think Josh Allen has, I think it is the 10th one, I believe. Josh Allen has Patrick Mahomes' number in the regular season. It's just the playoffs that Josh Allen and it's not Josh Allen's fault by any means. Like it's the defense kind of crumbles when they play Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, and like playoff Pat is a completely different animal than regular season Pat, but. We'll see if that witchcraft that the black magic that the Kansas City Chiefs had all last season, if it's gonna roll over into this season. So we have a revenge game as well, y'all. In week 7, we have Russell Wilson versus the Denver Broncos in week 7. Now, it's not a revenge game for Russ by any means. I feel like it's more of a revenge game for the Denver Broncos for highway robbery. That man robbed us, okay? That man robbed us for 2 years. And, you know, I mean, we're paying, everything's going smooth and peaches and rainbows for us now. But, you know, will he be healthy for week 7? 2, is he actually going to be the starter? So it's like, you know, because last time we played a Russell Wilson-led team, he was out. It was week 2 last year against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he was out. And we played Justin Fields, where we lost against the Pittsburgh Steelers at home. Which, that game stung, y'all. That game stung. And that was Bo Nix, one of Bo Nix's early struggles as a quarterback. Another revenge game rematch. We got the Super Bowl rematch in week 2 versus the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. Will the Kansas City Chiefs, you guys let me know, will they avenge their Super Bowl loss in week 2? It's very early on. It's a very early on Super Bowl rematch, so there's not too much. It could be implications maybe later down the line, but not too much implications. And week 2 is probably a perfect spot for them because maybe both teams will be damn right healthy going into this game. And then with Nick Sirianni, he just signed a contract extension too. He has the second most wins as a NFL head coach with 54, and I think in their first 4 or 5 seasons or something like that. So he's a bona fide winner. So one of these teams are going to be, one of these teams won't be undefeated going into week 3. So, or who knows, maybe both teams might be coming off a loss. We can't tell so far. With the schedule being released, we're still ways away from the regular season. We got to let everything kind of just kind of go into effect, y'all. And then the last game, that highlights it is a revenge game, is the Steelers versus the Packers or Jets. And the reason why I say this, y'all, is because if Aaron Rodgers signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers, he still hasn't signed with them. If he does, he will be playing his former teams, both the Green Bay Packers and the New York Jets. And then also, Justin Fields is going to be playing the Steelers regardless. So he's going to be having his revenge game against the Steelers. So, this is another revenge game kind of rematch or revenge game for sure for those two historic franchises, or 3, I guess. with all that, y'all, I do want to give my top 5 most anticipated games heading into the NFL 2025 regular season. Honorable mentions, like I said, we got the Broncos versus Commanders in that Monday Night Football game. We got the Bears versus Commanders in a Monday Football game as well in week 6. Another most anticipated game, and it's not the game itself, but it's more so Travis Hunter's first NFL career game. I'm very excited for that. It is who do the Jags play week 1? Let's see. Let me see, y'all. Let me see. Who are the Jags playing week 1? I should have had this up. They're playing the Carolina Panthers. So we get to see Travis Hunter versus Teterono McMillan, and against Bryce Young in that offense. And then on the defensive side, J.C. Horn's gonna be guarding Travis Hunter. So we're gonna see. I'm kind of excited for that game for sure. That's an honorable mention. And then obviously the Ravens versus Chiefs in week 4. It's always a treat to see Lamar Jackson versus Patrick Mahomes. But that rounds out my honorable mentions. But let's get into my top 5 most anticipated games, y'all. Starting off with number 5, we have the Bengals versus the Broncos in week 4. Yes, I'm a little biased with this pick. I'm sure you probably might think there's other suitable. Maybe those honorable mentions could be squeezed into the top 5. But I got Bengals versus Broncos in week 4. Again, if you guys remember last year, huge playoff implications in late in the season when the Broncos and Bengals faced off. It went into overtime. Bo Nix had a spectacular game tying touchdown with like 6 seconds left in the game to send the game into overtime. And then in overtime, Denver just kind of went stagnant on offense. I don't know what the hell we were doing on offense. Our defense was playing lights out. Jamar Chase could not get free of Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Surtain the second, excuse me. He couldn't get free of him. The defensive player of the year, he had that. I think that game really solidified him, even though they lost that game. I think the Broncos versus the Bengals, that game right there last year solidified him as the defensive player of the year. Albeit T. Higgins, he had a career game that year, that game as well. But that's probably my most anticipated game of the season. At number 5. Now at number 4. We have the Lions versus the Ravens in week 3. Now the Lions, they had a NFL high 15 wins last season, y'all. 15 wins. They had one of the most explosive, exciting offenses you could see in the NFL. The Detroit football is back, y'all. Dan Campbell has his team riding high and riding hot going into this regular season, y'all. You got guys like Jahmyr Gibbs. You got Jared Goff and all them. Amon St. Brown, Jameson Williams. All those guys for Detroit Lions, versus a very high power Ravens offense led by obviously Lamar Jackson, who should have been the 3-time MVP. Again, that's just my personal opinion. And then with Derrick Henry and stuff like that. So, seeing I think it's gonna be a high scoring game, both teams are gonna, probably shoot the lights out with probably 30 plus points from each team. So that week 3 game, Lions versus Ravens, that's number 4 for me. Now, number 3, y'all, and I was kind of, like I said, and for this one, it's more so, like I said, it is impactful because of the players that are in it. My number 3 most anticipated game is going to be in week 3, actually, the Minnesota Vikings versus the Cincinnati Bengals. As you can kind of see, the Bengals are kind of clogging up this list. Because you got former LSU teammates, college roommates, all that playing against each other. You got Justin Jefferson on the Vikings on the offensive side with JJ McCarthy. Hopefully by week 3 we'll kind of have some kind of idea of what kind of quarterback JJ McCarthy is, versus the proven Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Now, this too could be an offensive shootout, or could it just be we'll see where this goes, because we got to see where the Bengals defense kind of goes in terms of them, because if they are able to improve, that'll help out Joe Burrow a lot. Let's hope both teams are healthy by week 3. Of course, like I said, this is early on, AFC versus NFC matchup, AFC North versus NFC North. You know what I'm saying? We'll really see where this game will head. So at number 3, I got the Minnesota Vikings versus the Cincinnati Bengals. At number 2, y'all, and this, like I said, these two players have played each other 10 times and or 9 times up to this point, and this 10th time will always be a treat, and you always get a great game out of these two players. It's gonna be the Buffalo Bills versus the Kansas City Chiefs. That is my number 2 most anticipated game of the season. That's coming in week 9, so that is a little late. That's like midway through the season. There is playoff implications that could, arise later on. Whoever wins this game, I believe, will probably have home field advantage going into the playoffs. Between the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs. I think also for the Buffalo Bills, I think they're the only team in this. I think it's the first time in NFL history. I could be wrong, but that the Buffalo Bills are favored in every single game this year. So I don't know what the line is and how much they're favored for in this game against the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't really look into that stuff in terms of like for betting and all that. I don't really bet, but they are favored to win in every single game this year, and it looks like they're favored to win against the Kansas City Chiefs in Week 9. Again, you could be looking at maybe 2 loss teams going up against each other to really solidify their spot at that number 1 seed in the AFC going into Week 9. And for my number 1 most anticipated game of the season, we're rounding it off. It's a Week 1 game, so it's early on. It's one of the first games of the season, the first Sunday night game of the NFL season, being the Baltimore Ravens versus the Buffalo Bills. Again, you have Lamar Jackson, who constantly struggles in the playoffs against this Buffalo Bills team and against Josh Allen in general. So you got, like I said, it's 2 high-power offenses with Josh Allen leading the helm in Buffalo, and then with Lamar Jackson leading the helm in Baltimore. So you have these 2 teams going back and forth in Week 1. I like that it's early on. Week 1, Again, you can't put too much at stake in Week 1. You probably will have 2 fully healthy teams going into this game as well. It's probably going to be a sluggish fest because, every Week 1 game, you got the gears are kind of rusty for these teams. So just that Bills game versus the Ravens. Obviously, again, I said the Bills are favored in every single game this season. I'm sure they're favored against the Baltimore Ravens as well. Is it in Buffalo? Do you know? No.
Let's see. It's Buffalo hits the road to meet the Baltimore.
Oh, it's on the road, and they still got them favorites too. But like I said, both teams will hopefully be, barring anything crazy happening in OTAs and minicamp, preseason, whatever. Hopefully both teams are completely healthy by Week 1. So this is my most anticipated game of the year. I want you guys to let me know down below, what are your top 5 most anticipated games going into the 2025 season? Would you change anything on my list? Do you think I should just bump the Broncos out because you guys are just fucking Bronco haters or something? But I'm talking about you, Jaron. Jaron, if you're listening right now, brother, you see how I didn't put the Raiders as I didn't even mention the Raiders, because like I said, I think the Raiders are gonna win like maybe 4 or 5 games this upcoming season. Don't hold me to it though. Make sure to get ready to bet that money with me though, Jaron. So I just want you to know, the Broncos are getting the brooms out again to sweep your goddamn Raiders. And all my Chargers fans, be on the lookout too, because guess what? Denver's coming, and they're coming hot. They are coming.